Good evening, everyone. My name is James Shelton. I'm here with Nathan Reardon, Anas Musman, Shayla Robinson, and Christopher Morton to present our business overview for Eastern Eagle Computers. Right now, we're going to talk about the industry analysis that was done. We took a few snapshots of our market share and our balanced scorecard. We'll talk about our market share. It was very low, but it allows us for growth potential in the future. We can see that Team CPU has the largest market share. Past that, we'll walk over to our balanced scorecard. Our two areas of quality that we had were our future investment in the company that we've done throughout the past 2 years. It's done well for us. We believe that that is going to push us further and give us the growth that we need. Our HR management is another area of high quality. We like to take care of our employees, and I do believe that our employees in turn take care of us as a company. We did have some respectable scores in our marketing area, our manufacturing productivity, and our asset management. Most of our competitors led those areas in the scorecard, but we believe that we can take that on in the future as well. We know that we have areas for improvement, and one of the biggest ones is our financial risk. We'd like to bump that number up to allow investors to know that we're here for them and to make a profit and spread the wealth. So we can also see that our financial performance was very low, which in turn, our overall total performance was actually really low and quite frustrating to see as we had put a lot of work into our 2 years as a business. But as we will talk about further along here in the PowerPoint, our proposed strategy and where we're going. Now we're going to discuss the five-force model. Under the threat of new entrants, the level is low. The amount of investment that's needed for a new computer company to come into business is quite extensive. So under bargaining power of suppliers, we decided this was a low level as there are multiple suppliers out there and multiple companies buying from different suppliers. So we do not have a supplier that is cornering the market on one component. Then we'll move on to bargaining power of the buyers. We considered that a medium level to where the buyers out there have multiple companies to choose from to purchase from. They bounce from company to company, which would definitely make it a medium level to pull from one company to another. The threat of substitutes is at a moderately high level. Companies have laptops, desktops, but some have more to them as another company will have less. So the substitutes that people can go back and forth to different companies is there. And we'll move on to the intensity of rivalry among competitors. We consider that a high level because right now we're all battling for market share and we're moving to different regions. And that's one of the things we're hoping to do is spread it out so that we can take more of the market share.
Thanks, Jim, for covering the industry analysis and also talking about the five-force model. Now it's important for us to make sure that we as Eastern Eagle Computers look internally and understand our resources that we have. In this particular instance, where we're looking at physical, this is going to be based off of the sales offices that we have, where we have one that is in LA, and then we have two in the Middle East area. And we deem this to be a neutral as we compare to other competitors in the area. They had similar amount of sales offices. If they did open them, some only did web sales only. When we're looking at the human aspect of our resources, we will also deem this to be neutral as well. Just looking at the number of employees that we had in sales offices and comparing it with the number of resources for our web office centers, it was pretty comparable to competitors in the market. So we deem that in a neutral category. Now moving on to the organizational piece, we thought that this was a strength for us. And I'd say that based off of just looking at the reputation of our company. If we look in the sales simulation, we see that in the trophy room, we've received several trophies throughout the simulation that showed us in high favor. And some of those are captured here on the screenshot where we can see the top performance. Company had the highest balance scorecard in the industry. Based on that quarter, pool C, company balance scorecard is well above the norm and making it big time. Company held the highest financial performance, which is going to be greater than 50 in the sales simulation. And then the accolades continue to roll in. We definitely had something around our production levels, having 100% production within our company. So these are some of the reasons why we thought that our organization is a strength. On the downside of that, our financial, we deem that to be a weakness for us. that we did take out a loan earlier in production, and so we had to pay that back. There was a quarter where we ended up having to have an emergency loan, is make sure we pay back the loan sharks in this particular instance. So that was things that impacted the financial component as well. And I'll say something that is another data point is that we utilize a lot of investment in the future. And while that is very costly, that lowered our numbers, but we do think that that's going to be a benefit for us in the future. Now, taking a little bit further look at internal organization, there's a couple of components again that we're looking at here, where we have the value chain, core competencies, and then looking at our sustainable competitive advantage. With the value chain, we want to make sure that as a computer company that's entering in the industry, we wanted to make sure that we did enough market research to understand what the key points were for customers, what do they care about, so that we can build a product that is going to be able to suit their needs, not only now, but also thinking about that in the future as well. So leveraging that, we were able to make several different options for computers for our customers and helping us compete within the PC industry. Something else that stood out to us when doing our market research and looking at where our competitors were doing with their strategy, we were able to see that no one was setting up a location in the Middle East. And so we deemed that to be a market segment for us to enter and be able to be fruitful and being able to have a high demand. And we were able to do well in those particular areas. And moving on to the core competency that we have for Eastern Eagles Computers, we have human resources management. And this is something that the score for the human resource management was a 0.931, which is the highest out of all of the competitors that were in the industries. We also, again, did a big investment in the future. So we think that these are things that are going to be able to help us be competitive. And then focusing in on the sustainable competitive advantage is that we have brand management and advertisement effectiveness. This is, again, things that we've received trophies for within the simulation tool. So these are things that we deem to be extremely sustainable for us moving forward with our company. And then again, HR management as well, making sure that we are staying above the rest of the industry and making sure that employees are happy with all the things that they need. And this concludes what I had to cover for this section.
So for our current strategy analysis, our competitive strategy, we used a focused differentiation strategy, and we primarily focused on the workhorse and traveler section of the market. We did this due to the fact that customer needs and wants, as well as their software application needs, had major overlap in these two segments. For example, 6 out of 8 categories in needs and wants were the same between the two, as well as 4 out of 6 of the application uses. We felt that it would cut down costs and help us focus on our manufacturing and market efficiency. In order to do this, we used a functional structure where leadership had our designated role, but departments often interacted with one another and contributed to firm-wide decisions. So looking at our strategy, we had to ask ourselves, was this strategy effective? And it turns out this strategy was not very effective for this industry. And the reason is we ran into all of the major competitive risks involved in the focused differentiation strategy. The first is other competitors outfocused us in our target market segments. First, Minimalist PC and Computers R Us created more demand in the workhorse and traveler markets, respectively, and undercut us early on. Second, Minimalist PC, Computers R Us, and Team CPU also appeared to be targeting the whole market and started competing heavily in workhorse and traveler as these segments became more attractive. And finally, it appeared that the entire market began to have more overlap in consumer expectations for quality, and that ended up kind of hurting our competitive advantage there. As time went on, more demand for other segments grew and customers became more interested in other markets as well, so we couldn't sustain ourselves off of our targeted segments. So for Eastern Eagles, a performance analysis, I first looked at the balanced scorecard. We did poorly on our overall performance. We never scored highly in that section. So for example, our best overall score was still worse than all of our competitors' lowest averages combined. What primarily hurt us was our inability to capture a large enough market share with our strategy, leading to an inability to create wealth or profit for our shareholders. Ultimately, we weren't able to generate enough demand to compete with our competitors, and the demand we did generate, we were not able to consistently meet. Some goods we did was that there was areas where Eastern Eagles performed well. This was human resource management, investment in the future, and marketing effectiveness were areas that we scored highly in. However, it wasn't enough to overcome the negative impacts of our weakness on profits and revenues. So looking at our profits and revenues, Eastern Eagle was able to generate positive revenue as soon as we entered the market. However, based on our inability to generate high demand, as well as our inability to effectively use our assets, this was not enough to overcome the total amount of expenses that we incurred that led to our firm having consistent negative profit margins. There was not one quarter where Eastern Eagles was profitable. So looking at our financial ratios for liquidity first, Eastern Eagles was unable to pay short-term obligations compared to the rest of the industry. In fact, we had such poor data for our current and quick ratios that many of the quarter measurements were not available in our simulation. This tells investors that we were incredibly bad at handling our most liquid assets to maximize their output. For leverage, our debt to equity ratio as well as debt to asset ratios were nearly double the industry average. The amount of debt we took on was mostly due to our inability to generate cash, and this indicates that Eastern Eagles was not financially stable compared to our competitors and was unable to internally fund operations. For profitability, Eastern Eagles had poor gross profit margin as well as poor net profit margin performance compared to our competitors. You may notice that the entire industry had negative net profit. This is primarily due to the startup expenses that all market participants faced in the beginning. However, we were not able to generate a positive net profit margin in later quarters like our competitors, and that gave us a greater negative ratio. Finally, with our focused differentiation strategy, it's not unusual for a gross profit margin to be lower than others who targeted a broader market, but our poor performance on this further shows how this strategy may not have been appropriate for this industry. For our activity ratios, we consistently fared better than the industry average in inventory turnover. However, this was likely due to inadequate inventory stocking rather than a strong sales due to high demand. And this is further supported by the total asset turnover, which reflects a company's efficiency of creating sales with fewer assets. So our lower ratio indicates that we were not creating large sales that led to high turnover, but it suggests inefficiency in our asset management.
Our strategic change is aimed at both levels, business and tactical. While we have adopted the focused differentiation strategy, our sales were limited to a narrow market. Our customers' product usage was one of the main priorities that helped in identifying markets, but the fact that we ignored an industry-wide market triggered us to propose a new strategy, and therefore we have decided that going forward our strategy will be integrated cost leadership differentiation. The last strategy is developing a combined low-cost distinctiveness approach to a market like Coast Cutter and Innovator that will give us the ability to create value for customers. When it comes to capabilities and core competencies for our tactical strategy decisions, our marketing effectiveness is considered as one of our competitive advantages, which means that we have a great opportunity to focus on other markets like Innovator and Mercedes while focusing our marketing effectiveness on both segments. Our second strategy is that we have identified regions like Mercedes to sell unwanted inventory by the second quarter of the following year to make the necessary adjustments for the upcoming quarters. Eastern Eagle has been operating through two segments, Workhorse and Traveler, yet ignoring other markets didn't go well. Therefore, we have decided to redirect our competitive advantages towards other market segments like Innovator and Coast Cutter. By expanding our target market, we anticipate a higher growth level in our overall market performance, also aligning our new product features that go side by side with these two new market segments. We will be able to introduce new products that serve customer wants and needs.
Eastern Eagles company decided to reside in Mexico City for our production. We decided as a company for an estimate about 6 people for our hire team. When we reached quarter 6, we changed the number of people that we hired from 6. We increased them to 14 due to the needs for demand of the product. And then the total demand went from about 240 to about 360. It all fluctuated due to the product selling and not selling as well. And that comes into the unwanted inventory that we had and changing the brands throughout because some brands wasn't producing as much as other brands. And when it comes to target and replenish points, our target is based upon how much product we have to store inside of our facility. We decide that by basing off half of the target points. So when we first estimated our guests, we started off with 100 due to not knowing how much of the demand we would need and product we would be selling. And then as quarters went on and going through the numbers, we increased our target points from 100 to 200. But throughout the quarters, as you can see here, once we started getting on and demand wasn't being profitable as it should have, we had to decrease our target points. So our operating capacity was how much speed we would need in our facility, and then our fixed capacity, we never really changed. We either stayed at a 0, a 50, or 100, and that was the maximum number of units that the production facility could produce each day.
For our functional strategy, we have altered our decisions in different functional areas to best suit our company strategies. Starting with HR, HR should make the necessary adjustments to maintain its industry leading position for HR management. Moving to the production decisions, we have decided to sell the unwanted inventory by the second quarter of the following year to make the necessary adjustments for the upcoming quarters and fulfill the gap between our production capacity and the total net demand we can generate from our web sales center channel. Looking at our R&D, we have focused on slim design along with Pro with ease of use to get the highest level of customer satisfaction. And now moving to our last functional strategy, which is marketing. We have decided to tailor our sales and marketing initiatives towards more market segments, introduce new advertisements, modifications, and aim our sales to best suit those markets, and finally increase our number of inserts toward the cost cutter segment.